Are you listing out these 5 things before you sight read a piece? Well, if you're not, it's making your life way, way harder. Your piano teacher Tim here, and let me show you the first one. Okay, the first thing you need to be on the lookout for is the key signature of a piece. Now, like I said, you may or may not be familiar with this, but a key signature, specifically what you're going to be looking out for are obviously what sharps are flat throughout a piece. So in the key signature, if you had a note on each, where each of these sharps are located, you know, you have the top note there, that space, and that line. Those 4 notes you would have are F, C, G, and D. This means that no matter what line or space they're on, those notes are sharp throughout the entire piece. You want to really, really understand what the key signature is telling you. Not just glance at it, not just know what the key name is. You have to know exactly what it's telling you. I have another tip for you is when you determine what key you're in, this case we happen to be in C sharp minor, you want to play the C sharp minor scale on the piano. Now why is that? Because it helps you map out the 4 sharps you have. Also, by playing the scale, it kind of shows you, it definitely shows you the tonal center, meaning that the notes are going to be centered around C sharp. And likely you're going to have some scale patterns in there. So playing the scale along with the key signature that it's based on is really, really important and will help you out a lot. All right, let's get to thing number 2. Okay, thing number 2 you need to be on the lookout for. Of course, I am talking about the time signature, which is right next to the key signature. It's this fraction looking thing right here. And what that tells you is that the top number tells you how many beats are in a measure, so in each of these boxes. And then the bottom number tells you what note gets 1 count or 1 beat. So this whole time you've probably been learning that a quarter note, one of these guys, just, you know, a filled in note head with a stem on it, is worth 1 beat. So if you're playing 4/4, it's no problem. That's true. But if it's like 6/8 or something where the bottom number is no longer a 4, then the quarter note is actually going to change how many beats it gets. And if you're scared by this, you're probably don't have to worry in the beginning, because a lot of the songs you're going to be playing are 4/4, 3/4, and 5. Well, 5/4 is a little bit out there, but and then you'll move on to 6/8. If it has an 8 at the bottom, what note do you think gets 1 beat? An eighth note. So think about 4 quarter, right? You split something into 4, that's a quarter. Split something into 8, that's an eighth note. If it's at a 16 on the bottom, what kind of note would get 1 beat? A 16th note. Makes sense. You also want to be on the lookout for, there's nothing here, but you want to be on the lookout for time signature changes. That goes with key signature changes as well. Likely the example won't change unless you're doing something a bit more advanced, but you want to be on the lookout for that for sure. And then the last thing you want to be on the lookout for related to the key signature is usually this. It'll either have a word like adagio, allegro, and that'll tell you how fast to go, or it'll say quarter note or half note equals a certain number. And that's actually what you're going to set your metronome to if you want to play it necessarily at full speed. Now, when you're sight reading, I don't think it's practical in a lot of cases, unless you're more advanced, again, to play something at full speed. So you kind of want to look at that, understand that maybe like that's the ideal tempo you want to go. Get as close you can to that, but I would honestly focus on getting the notes right and getting the rhythms right first. All right, let me show you the next thing you need to be on the lookout for. Okay, the next thing you want to be on the lookout for are accidentals, which is an odd term because the composer purposely put them in there. What are they? Well, let me show you, and let me show you, how it applies to sight reading. So obviously, in the beginning, I said look out for the key signature. Know how many flats and know where those are at, B, E, A, and D. It really helps to know music theory for this, but you can, like I said, draw the notes and figure it out. But the more important thing for this point is to look for notes that do not conform to the key signature. These are known as accidentals. and they will be designated by a sharp, flat, or natural in the middle of the piece. Now, keep in mind that an accidental, they should really be called temporaries because it only really applies to that measure in that instance for where that sharp or flat is. So you want to be on the lookout for that. So when you're sight reading or before you sight read, pick out in your mind, I'm like, okay, in measure 3, there's a natural. In measure 4, there's a natural. What notes are they? Well, there's a B natural. So instead of the B flat, instead of, let me bring up the whole thing here. Here we go. That's what I meant to do. Instead of the B flat, you're going to have a B and then a C natural. No, I don't feel like that's, no, because it's bass clef. My apologies. So you're going to have a D natural in that one measure, and then an E natural in the next. So just keep in mind that for that temporary moment in time that those are changed, and then you have some flats. So be on the lookout for those for sure, because especially if there's a lot of accidentals, it's going to trip you up, and it's better to mark them out ahead of time. Does that mean that you're automatically not going to make a mistake on them? No, but it's going to increase your chances in getting through the passage of music without making those critical mistakes. Okay, one thing that trips up all students, especially in the beginning, are the distances between B and C and E and F when it comes to accidentals. So here's the thing. In a piece of sheet music, you're going to find C flats every once in a while. So you're just going to have to know that that's a B. For some reason, that trips everybody up because they really expect there to be a black key in between here. Same thing for here. B sharp is really C. Now, music theory standpoint, it's still B sharp, but we're not going to get into that today. Know that E sharp is F and F flat is E. So just be especially on the lookout for those and actually play them ahead of time before you start playing, because they get everybody. They don't really get me so much anymore, but they got me for a long time. All right, on to the next point. So notes, whether they're sharp or flat, in the rhythms aren't the only thing involved in making a piece of sheet music what it is, and music, making it sound musical. There's more to it than that. And the next thing you really need to be on the lookout for are dynamics. So dynamics are how loud or how soft you play. So I'm not going to go over them all, but just generally know that P means soft, F means loud. Double P, pianissimo, means very soft. Double F means very loud. And then if you have MF or MP, that kind of brings them towards the middle. But you really, really need to be on the lookout for these and try to integrate them the best you can in your sight reading experience. Now, like I said, notes and rhythms, accuracy in those take precedence. Everything else is really secondary, but the more you can add in these finer details right off the bat when you sight read, the better of a sight reader you're going to be, because it really saves time. So think if I'm learning this piece for real, which I have before, and I'm sight reading it, well, hey, if I get the notes, I get the rhythms, I get the dynamics, I get as much of the other things as possible, well, hey, that's a lot of the legwork that's already done for me. So I don't have to go back and play it again with all the other stuff. But remember, this is more advanced. This is after you've been sight reading for a while. You get those notes down. You get those rhythms down really well. You can play it at a reasonable tempo. Then add in those dynamics. But even if you're just reading a piece of sheet music that you've played before, then you definitely want to be on the lookout for that as well. Okay, other than dynamics, what makes music sound musical, other than everything else I mentioned, are the articulations. Now, what in the world is an articulation? Well, it's all these other lines and dots and things around notes. Not so much the dotted note. That's more of a rhythm thing when it's off to the side. But see, this passage here, you've got some staccatos there, meaning to play them short. So it's giving you some more information on how to play the notes. Everything I've listed today is in order of priority. So this is even a lower priority when sight reading, by the way. If you're mastering the piece, then yeah, that's high priority. But if you are sight reading, This is even after the dynamics, I would say. Adding these in will really make the music sound really good rather than just, like all flat. It sounds okay. But if you add in all this stuff, it sounds so much better. If you're finding the lesson helpful so far, you know what to do. You need to kablooey! Smash the like button. Assignment time. Yes, you have homework. What do you need to do? Well, what you need to do is, as I mentioned in the intro, a lot of people know about these already, but they're not thinking them through before they're sight reading or before they're reading any piece of music. It doesn't have to be sight reading. What you need to do is you need to list all the 5 things we talked about today, and then what you need to do is you need to list them, put them in a list, put them right by where you play piano, and look at them before you read through your music. And you need to make this a regular activity. You need to make it a habit to look for these, because if you don't, and every once in a while it gets me too, I just jump into a piece and I'm like, oh, I don't really understand what's happening here. And this is why. So you need to make that list. You need to make it a habit. All right, on to the next exciting part of the lesson. Everybody's favorite time, quiz time, where I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, maybe 2 or 3, about the lesson today. And if you can answer them, pretty well, then you understand the main parts of this lesson. If you can't understand them, you need to go back and watch parts of the lesson again or the whole thing. I always recommend watching the lesson more than once. But you need to go back and watch to see if you can pick out the answers. Here we go. Question number 1. This one's simple, but hopefully you've been paying attention. What are the 5 things, yes, 5, that you need to be on the lookout for when sight reading a piece of music? Question 2, why is knowing what the key signature is important? Question 3, I mentioned 4 accidentals that students always get wrong. They're actually between 2 sets of notes. So if you can answer that part, that's fine. But what are the 4 accidentals that students always miss that you especially need to be on the lookout for? Okay, time for the next part of the lesson. I asked you on social media if you had any questions that you wanted to go over during this lesson about sight reading or just playing music in general. So let's go to the community tab and take a look. Okay, here we are on the community tab. So scroll down, or I'm scrolling down. You don't have to scroll down. I'm going to do it all for you. Okay, our first question or comment here, we'll see which one it is. I believe it's a question if I remember, is by Greg Wiles, who says, I struggle with sight reading, but there's something I do that helps me get through learning new pieces. I pencil in all the notes. Ooh. Doing that helps me learn songs, but I'm not sure if it hurts my progress in the long run. I've asked some musicians about this, and I get mixed opinions about it. I wonder if you think it's a good idea or not. Tim? Well, the answer is no. It's not a good idea. However, there are some times when you should write in a note. If you miss it like over and over and over again, or if it's a note like that the composer has written really, really high up on many, many ledger lines, then I think it's okay. They really should be using the 8VA when they do that, but they don't always do that. Sometimes it's just really impossible to read. You can write them in then. You might even want to erase them later. But what you definitely don't want to do is write in every single note, or even half the notes, or even a quarter of the notes. That's too many. You'll want to use it sparingly. You want to use it when it makes sense. If you use it all the time, you're not really reading the sheet music. You're cheating. And you'll actually spend a lot of more time writing in the notes in the long run. So say you spend 2 years learning how to read music really well. You've been playing, and you can sight read really, really well and actually read the music. You don't have to write in any. From that point on, you're going to be able to learn and read pieces so much faster than you could than if you were writing them in, because every time then you do a piece, you have to write it in. The next question, it looks like more of a comment, I think I read this earlier, is by our wonderful, amazing student Carol Etchoff, who says, well, this is what I do. For any music, know the key signature, time signatures. Oh, wow. Hey, this should look familiar, guys. Time signatures, dynamics, accidentals, slurs, ties, staccatos, etc. Rhythmic and melodic patterns, play slowly, keep my eyes on music. That's a good point. Avoid looking up, down from music to my hands. Always look ahead to see if what I'm going to be playing next. Okay, looking ahead is actually not a bad strategy. It's a little bit more of an advanced one. And it's something that, yeah, if you've been sight reading for a while, you should do. But for sure, even if I make some mistakes. Then after I do my sight reading, I do an evaluation on my playing, and then go back and see my mistakes. Set a goal for the third time to reread the music. Always keep a pencil on my piano, highlighter, and ink pen, and extra post notes to mark where I need to correct things, and always use a metronome for my rhythm. Hopefully this pointer helps other students. And do not get a good piano light. I don't know, piano light. Anyway, I recommend getting a good piano light, unless we're talking about two different things. Anyway, to the question or the statement, yeah, so a lot of what you said was perfect and spot on. Now, it's contradictory a little bit to what I said, because you did mention about taking notes, post-it notes, whatever. So from what I understand, what you're doing is you're sight reading, and then you're kind of, one says a genuine sight read, and then you're kind of regrouping, kind of thinking, okay, where am I making the mistakes? And, maybe pointing them out, and then going through and correcting as many of the mistakes as you can. I think this is fine. You want to, over time, perhaps use less notes, less writing things in, and try to get them all in your head as much as possible. Pianists, for some reason, probably because back then they didn't have computers, pianists are expected to memorize everything. When I was reading, or when I was playing in recitals in music school, only the pianists were required to memorize, which was crazy, because we would have, here, listen to me complain, we would have like 14 sheets of music to memorize. Actually, I had like 20 some in that senior recital I posted. That was well over like 28 pages of memorization. P.S. See you next lesson on Friday. Okay, well, that takes care of that. All right, so those are all the questions I got. Let's get on to the next section. So what should you do next? Well, the first thing you need to do is smash that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, because you have new lessons coming out all the time. You don't want to miss a beat. But what you definitely want to do in terms of watching something else is check out my playlist on how to sight read. I have a couple of really good lessons in there. I'm also going to put another collection here of how to read music faster using a bunch of techniques that I've talked about on the channel, but it's really, really good that you get those, because you'll be able to read and sight read that much faster. It's been your piano teacher, Tim, here once again. Thank you for coming out to our classroom, and I'm going to see you, yes, you, in that next lesson.